Today I've got a lot of decks to show you. So before I head back to France, I wanted to take advantage of all my sister's decks, and I thought, why don't I share them with you guys, because you know how much we love to look at decks, and I have not her whole collection because she's took some with her to her boyfriend and some of her decks are still in France, but majority of the collection is here, and I have about 20 decks to show you. So this isn't going to be a review of the decks. I'm just gonna go through the decks and show you which ones I like working with the most, I guess. I thought this deck was a great deck to start with. This is the Night Sun Tarot deck, and this was actually, let's have a look. So this was actually the first deck that my sister ever had, and I bought it for her. I bought this deck for her before she was even into tarot or cards or anything. I'd been into it for a while, and you know, as you do, you want your friends, and my sister's one of my best friends, to, you know, enjoy your hobbies with you and your interests. It did take her probably about a year or two before it kind of clicked and she started to really have her own connection with the cards, and then she is where she is today with lots of decks and you know, an avid card slinger. So this was the little guy who started it all, and she will admit that this guy was neglected for majority of its time in her ownership, but I believe she recently has started reconnecting with it. So maybe it wasn't the best deck to really get her indulged in the tarot, because, you know, like I said, it was like a year or two before her connection really began, and it began when she started buying other decks. But still, she's held on to this guy. I think it has a bit of sentimental value. We'll have a little look at the cards. She's kind of was, not so much now, but she used to be very much into like a dark gothic heavy metal kind of aesthetic, and she has, from an 80s band called Death, she has like a really cool tattoo of them, and the artwork on here reminded me a lot of her tattoo. But these are the backs, and it's that standard kind of playing cardstock and that standard kind of tarot sized deck. So we have the backs, and these are the cards. It's like not the best lighting, to be honest, for showing off cards. But yeah, it's very kind of dark and gothic. It's got horses in it. Obviously me and my sister both have horses and love horses. The Night Sun Tarot. Now I'm just going to grab decks off the pile. This is in no particular order. So the next deck I see is this Secret Language of Light. There we go. Comes in a bigger box than the cards are. This is by Blue Angel Publishing. These are the backs of the cards, which I think are just such beautiful, like pastel backs. There's a battle against the light here. This is an Oracle deck. I don't think I mentioned that. So it's just these kind of very cosmic artwork pieces. It's very like energy reading, so it's not like detailed descriptive art. It's more like a frequency art, so it's really good for the intuition and just tuning in to the frequency of the art. And it comes with keywords. This one's called Soul Tree. This one is You Are the Universe. It also has numbers on here so that you can use numerology, so I always like that in Oracle deck. I've used this deck a few times and I actually really like it. I find I get very good meditations after using a card from this deck, and then it also does have guided meditations for each card in the book. That is an oracle, which is the secret language of light. Let's stick with the secret language, because we have the secret language of light, and now I will be showing you the secret language of color. Again, another oracle card. This isn't as like high quality, because you can tell with like the stapled book, but this is just your typical kind of color deck. These are the backs, and these are the colors. They tend to use actual images there, like you've got wine for that burgundy color, and actual lavenders for the color lavender, peaches for the color peach, you know, so it's kind of like stock image vibe. Not my favorite vibe, although I do like using this deck sometimes, because sometimes you just want to have a color reading, and it is great for that. I found it really easy to connect with this deck, but again, I didn't feel like I was connecting with the art. It was more just the colour and learning the energies of the colours, which was cool. The next one I mentioned in my last favourites video, so I'm not going to go through it, but it is the Mystic Martian Oracle, and I love this deck. That's why it made it to my favourites, so definitely go back. I'll put that in the iCard if you want to check that out and see me talk a lot more in depth about this super cool alien deck, which is awesome. This deck is by Carla Moreau, and it's the Enchanted Blossoms Oracle. This is a stunning deck, and if you love dragons and you love botanical art, then this is going to be the deck for you. I love dragons and I love botanical art, and that is actually quite a theme with Kelly's decks as well. She's really into botanical decks. She just loves like flowers and flower decks. So I'll also leave a page to her Etsy shop, because she is an artist, so she's often painting some really cool art and selling it on her Etsy shop. At the moment she's doing a series on fruit, so definitely check that out and support her if you can. I'd really appreciate that. Tell her that Helki sent you. I just think this is just aesthetically gorgeous. It comes with a really cute book. This is again by Blue Angel Publishing. It's a black and white book, but it's just really well made. Oh, they're kind of like dragon butterflies. So it's like basically creatures that are a mix of a flower and a mix of butterflies. So it's these sort of like dragony creatures, but I don't think she actually calls them dragons. It's just like a combination of the plant and a butterfly, a certain type of butterfly. But they're just gorgeous. These are the backs. And it's that kind of smooth rose petal matte. And then these are some of the images. And it has like keywords on there, like this one says dreams, inspiration, patience, faith. So you could just work intuitively with the image and the keyword, but you can also use the book. I think there's some really great insights in here. So yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite decks of Kelly's. I really like this deck because I'm not sure if they are supposed to be dragons or not, but they give me dragon energy, and you know me on this channel, you know I love a bit of dragon energy. The next deck that I've grabbed is called the Elemental Oracle. And this is cool, like it's like you can't really see because of the light, but it's got that sort of holographic effect on the side. On the book as well. And on, actually it's just silver. I thought it would be like a holographic edge, but it's think it's just silver, yeah, it's just a silver edge, but it's still gorgeous. The backs of this deck are stunning. I just love that Milky Way kind of color, pastel coloring. And then the cards are like this. You might know already that I have a deck by the same creator, which was called the Moon Goddess deck, and they're very similar themes. So I think she's brought out a few different decks that have this same kind of theme and artwork, but obviously different subjects, like the Queen of the Moon, and this is elemental based. But yeah, I just love this deck. I find the images are gorgeous. There's lots to work on. Numbers again. So I really like this deck. I haven't worked with it a ton, but I am very drawn to it. Okay, the next deck is this Witch's Kitchen Oracle cards. They have a few of these out. I think like 3, 4, maybe 5 different varieties of this deck. And I have the Witch's Wisdom, and this is the Witch's Kitchen. And I really do love this series of decks. They all have a similar kind of energy to them, but obviously around different subjects. These are the backs, just really cool quadrant with these gold edges. And these are some of the images. So again, it's a kitchen witch deck, so it's all to do with kitchen witchery, which I like to think of myself as sort of a hybrid between a kitchen witch, green witch, a hedge witch. I agree that you can't really put yourself in a box, but yeah, I love in this kitchen witches deck. I used this quite a few times over the years that she's had it. Not had a lot of strong readings with it so far, but I've only sort of done it 1 card pulls, and I haven't worked with it for a period of time. But if I had the opportunity to, I really think I would connect well with this deck, as I do the other deck that I already have. Let's look at this deck, which is one of the Rebecca Campbell decks. You'll know there's about 3 different decks out by her in this similar kind of aesthetic, and Kelly actually has another one of them. All the artwork's done by Danielle Knoll, which is probably why it has that similar aesthetic. I would kind of say it is a series of sort of Starseed Lightworker style decks, much more for that new age type of witch, or like if you're really into that sort of pastel cosmic aesthetic, and if you're very connected with your starseed roots, you're more of an alien type witch, then I think you would really connect well with these decks. So one is called Work Your Light Oracle cards, and the other one that my sister has is called the Starseeds Oracle. I believe she has another deck out, maybe even 2 at this point. First we'll look at Work Your Light Oracle, which is the first of this series that my sister got. I used to have this deck and I traded it for my Dragon Oracle cards with my best friend Steph, because I felt more connected to the dragons oracle that she had, and she felt more connected to this. She is like, Steffi is such a freaking starseed. She definitely hasn't had that many lives here on Earth, so there's no surprise that she ended up connecting with this type of deck. Like I said, it is perfect for that type of person. So yeah, the backs are beautiful, and I did buy it because I was like, oh my god, like I just love the aesthetic, but sadly I just didn't connect well with this deck. But yeah, it's really cool. I really love the images. It's sort of that rose petal matte again, and I think I could connect well with this deck if I have spent enough time with it, so I'm definitely not writing it off. It's just not a soul deck for me. Okay, let's look at the other Rebecca Campbell, the Starseed Oracle. I love this box, right? Very cool, very unique. Again, it has that same kind of pastel, spacey aesthetic. These are the backs for this one. I actually kind of prefer the more subtle colours on the backs of this rather than the rose. And I think I actually like the aesthetic just a bit more than this, even though they're so, even though they're so similar, right? Very similar, but this has a more like crystally, like look at those sparkles on that card, you know. It's just got a more of a magical vibe to this. Let's see what card fell out. Star Keeper. Cosmic Ancestor, seed the light by staying grounded. Good message. Okay, let's shift gears a bit into the animal realm. My sister has another really cool animal deck, but it's not here. She's took it with her, which I actually really like her other deck a lot. This deck, I do like this deck. I think it's got plastic cards, but the card quality on this deck is really interesting. Not like my usual choice, and also I've never had a deck with this kind of card stock. But anyway, this deck is called Messages from Your Animal Spirit Guides Oracle card by Stephen D. Farmer. And if you remember, Stephen D. Farmer also released the Earth Magic Oracle, which I have that deck back in France, and I love the Earth Magic Oracle deck that he created. It's a really beautiful deck, and this deck I love, just not as much. Like I said, I think it is the card stock that puts me off a little bit. My sister, on the other hand, loves this card stock, and that's how you know that there really is a deck for everyone, and everyone has different wants and needs and tastes. I'm always excited to see the variation of decks out there, just knowing that it's reaching so many more people. Okay, so these are the backs of the cards. And if I just show you, you'll hear the sound of it. I think they're plastic. You hear that sound? Yeah, like I'm not sure about that sound, but other than that, the cards are really cool. I like the styling of the cards. I kind of like the border that looks a bit like a wooden border, and I like the kind of stamp style of the artwork, animal artwork. And I do think that you get great messages from this deck, as I am such an earth-based witch. I really connect with things of the earth, animals being one of the number one things that I connect with and I get messages from. So I find that I always do get on well with animal-based decks, and I know a lot of people dislike animal-based decks, especially tarot, which I can understand more because I'm very basic when it comes to the tarot. Still, Rider Waite is my favourite, but when it comes to oracle cards, I really love animal decks. So, yeah, it comes with a little paragraph on each card. Here's the gorilla card. It says, take the time to listen compassionately to those you love, especially your family members. So I feel like you could just really get your message straight from the card. It's got a good paragraph in there that you could really reflect on and journal on, and you could get very intuitive with the artwork as well, because I do feel like the artwork gives you a lot to work with. It's kind of simple but alive, you know. But of course it has a guidebook which expands on each of the cards if you want that. So overall, yeah, this is a yay. I like this deck. Okay, the next decks I want to talk about are the Teal Swan decks. Okay, so Teal Swan is a spiritual teacher for like self-development and things like that. I'm a huge fan of Teal Swan, so is my sister and my best friend actually. We all went and saw her do a talk in 2018, which was amazing. Her energy is insane, but yeah, she's just really great for like any kind of shadow work or working with the inner child, working with yourself, overcoming things. She's amazing. So she brought out a deck years ago, and still neither of us have got that deck, just because it's only posted from her website in the USA, and the postage is very expensive. So we haven't actually got around to getting that deck yet, but I hope one day to get that deck. But she has, over the last couple of years, released decks with publishers, so they're available at tarot shops and Amazon, etc. So this one was actually, both decks are released by Watkins, which you may know from my other videos is my favorite witchy, witchcraft and occult bookshop in London. It's one of the oldest bookshops in London, and it's an amazing bookshop. They have so many decks, and they also are a publishing house, so they publish a lot of books and tarot decks as well in the witchcraft and occult scene. They did recently release Kelly Ann Maddock, which is an amazing author slash witch tuber here on YouTube. I'm sure you all know her. Her book was called Rebel Witch, and yeah, she released that via Watkins, and just as Teal Swan has released books via them, but also her decks. So they're big decks. Like, Teal Swan ain't messing when it comes to her decks. This was the first deck that she released with Watkins, and I believe it was a year or two ago, and this is called the Blind Spot Oracle. So you can see that is a chunky deck. Then last year, so her most recent deck, she released the Inner Compass deck. Look at this whopper. Yes, that's how many cards there are in this deck. It feels like it's about 3 or 4 oracle cards in one, like oracle decks in one, I mean. And does it say how many cards are on here? I'll look at that in a minute. So first, let's start with the Blind Spot Oracle by Teal Swan. I love this. It comes with 78 cards, so the same amount as you get in a tarot deck, but they are like oracle cards. They're not tarot. I've seen them be labeled tarot cards, but I think that's just a mistake on the seller's point. Okay, so basically all the cards in this deck are sigil art. This is the backs of the deck, and then these are the cards. So as you can see, they're all numbered, and they all have their own unique sigil, which was drawn and designed by Teal Swan. And then in the book, you see what that sigil means. So here on the top of the deck, it's number 31. Let's have a look what it says in the book for 31. Okay, so 31, the name of this card is called Limits, and as you can see, the card description starts here, goes on to this page, all of this page, and then up to there. So you're getting like 2.5 big pages per card, and I really highly recommend, obviously, really doing the work. When it comes to this deck, this is a shadow work deck. Its said use is to help you find what you are not seeing. The Blind Spot Oracle cards have a simple but incredibly effective purpose to reveal what you are not aware of relative to the question you are asking. So say if you were, you're asking your normal question like you would to the tarot, but you're seeing what your blind spot is, like, what about this situation am I not seeing? Yeah. and it's amazing, and it goes really deep, and it gives you a process and steps to work with the card you've pulled and the energy that you're not seeing, and how can I work through this shadow, basically. Something so cool about this deck, which I've not seen with any other deck, and I think more decks need to do this. Like, damn, if I ever create a tarot deck, I might be copying this idea from Teal Swan. Because say, for example, you want to pull a card for, okay, what am I not seeing for my own self-development? What do I need to work on to really get myself on path to where I want to be, to get to my goals? For example, say you pull a card and then you're like, okay, I'm going to work with this energy for the next week, maybe. A great way to really work with that energy, and remembering the power of sigils. I think any of you witches or mages out here, you're going to know the power of sigils, and especially like these have been created and drawn with the intention of the keyword and the energy each card is assigned to. So they're very powerful. So not only can you take this card, put it on your altar like you would with any of your oracle or tarot cards when you're working with them in this way, but you can also, wait for it, the bottom of the box here, there is this whole stack of tattoos, of temporary tattoos. This is a stack of the different sigils on the cards. So say you're working with that for a week, I could find the sigil related to it in the tattoo, put it on me, and then I've got the energy of that working. It's an amazing way to help us work with these cards, because you're literally carrying the energy of the sigil, which is so powerful, on your skin with you. You're integrating it. How cool is that? Because as this integrates with your skin, you're able to integrate the message of the blind spot, of the message of what you're not seeing, to have an understanding and bring that into yourself, I just think that's so cool. So do I recommend this blind spot tarot? Yes. Is it one of my favorite of my sister's decks? Hell yeah. I love this deck, and it's not a light-hearted deck. I wouldn't use this just for anybody. I would use it in shadow work readings. So when we're trying to dive deep into shadows, and we're really trying to when I'm trying to work with a client through their shadows, or I'm trying to work with myself through my own stuff, then this is a very serious deck that can really help shift energy. So it's super powerful, but like I said, it is for intense work, intense shadow work. So it's not a use every week kind of deck, unless you're like constantly wanting to work with that kind of energy. But yeah, it's such a good one to have in your collection, and I highly recommend it. Okay, so the next deck is the latest of Teal Swan's deck, which is the Inner Compass deck, which this is a Teal Swan deck that you can use on a regular. You could use it daily, you could use it weekly. It's not as intense and heavy as the sigil work with the blind spot tarot oracle. The Inner Compass deck is great for diving really deep. It can be as deep working and process as you get with the blind spot, but the blind spot is also using sigil magic, and sigil magic is really good at the unconscious stuff. I still think that this is really great with the unconscious stuff, but you're sort of working with it consciously. But when you're working with the sigils, using the imagery of the sigils, then you are working a lot with the unconscious. Interestingly, this comes with a really tiny book, and it doesn't have card descriptions in. It just has a few ways that you can use this deck, and there are many ways that you can use it. There are 200 cards in this deck. Yes, 200 cards. I knew there was a lot of cards, but wow. So let's have a look. Let's look at all these cards. Whoa. Yep. That's the full deck, baby. Whoa. So many cards. I can just about hold them. Like, just about. I don't think I could shuffle them. There's literally no room in my hands to shuffle these. Let's have a look at the cards. So these are the backs. I love the backs. I just love, and this is Teal Swan's art, I believe, because she is also an artist. There's the backs. These are all the cards, so many. And then there are 4 extra cards, which are not like you're pulling cards. These are like 4 different types of spreads. I haven't done all the types of spreads, but one of the ones I've done is this west, south, east and north cards. And then you basically pull a spread, so you pull a card for each placement. And then we've got north says the very most important to me. What is most important to me? And then you pull a card for it, right? Then the next one, east, is what's just important to me. So it's important, but it's not the most important, okay? So the next thing that's important to me. Then on west, you have somewhat important to me. So just a step down there. So you've got 3 things in order of what's most important. And then south is not important to me, which it's actually really helpful to have the what's not important to me right now card, because I remember once I was doing this spread, and believe it or not, what came out under south for not important to me was gratitude. And you wouldn't think that. You think gratitude's always important, right? But actually for that moment and for that reading, I really needed to let go of gratitude and focus on the other things that were in that. I found that really interesting. It's interesting to see that sometimes there are times in our lives where we need to put like some priorities aside. For example, that day it was gratitude. I needed to put that aside. It needed to not be my focus, and I needed to focus on these other things. When it comes to shuffling this deck, I often put them into 3 or 4 piles, and I shuffle each pile and I pull a card from each pile. If I just want one card, I'll put it into piles, wave my hand over the top and pick a pile I feel drawn to, shuffle that pile until I get one card. Or you could even spread them out over the bed. There's so many cards. And run your hand over them until you find the cards. There's so many ways you can shuffle them, but yeah, breaking it into 3 like handfuls that are easy to shuffle, yeah, that's great. I do apologise if you can hear the hoover going on in the background, but yeah, there's nothing I can do about that. The cards themselves are basically just keywords with about a paragraph to go with them, yeah? So it's just a ton of keywords and just so much wisdom in these cards, yeah? You can work alone from the card. You don't need the book, which is really good as well when you want to get in and connect with the cards and connect with your intuition. You don't always want to be going through a book. But yeah, love this deck. I don't really know what else I can say about it other than it's awesome and I highly recommend it. Out of the 2 Teal Swan decks, I probably would recommend the Inner Compass, just because I think it's more versatile, as in you can use it daily, and you can go, okay, what energy do I need to bring in this day? What do I need to focus on? You know, pull a card, okay, willingness. Okay, I'm going to use that today. I need to be willing today, you know. to demonstrate a yes to things and experiences and life via my energy, thoughts, words and actions, to be prepared for, inclined towards, ready for, or to do, bear or accept things by choice or without resistance and reluctance, to do what is needed or asked, to take opportunities. Oh, that is actually the perfect card for me today. I've had to sort of allow myself to be willing to accept things I don't want to accept. One of them things today was that I got a speeding ticket through the door at the worst time. I'm planning to go back to France next week, and I don't know if I'm going to have to delay that now because of the bloody speeding ticket, but I need to embrace willingness, right? I need to accept what is and find a positive and move forward, and don't just, you know, be stubborn and unwilling to accept something that is, you know, it is. I have to accept it. So what's the point of you know, allowing that to bring me down? And willingness, literally the perfect card for me today. I find that this deck really knows how to hit it right on the mark. Yeah, so because this deck is like a deck you can deep dive with when it comes to shadow work, but you can also use for daily pulls, I would recommend getting the Inner Compass deck first if you're drawn to a Teal Swan deck. But I also think this is something you should keep in mind of adding to your collection, especially if you like this one, because I think it's really important for us to do the deep inner work that something like this Blind Spot Oracle supports. Okay, the next deck is this Earth Wisdom Oracle by Barbara Moore, and I actually brought this for my sister. I remembered buying it for her years ago. Obviously, once she'd really got into decks, this is like years after I bought her that other deck, and I would see this deck around like on YouTube and stuff, and I'd be like, I know I bought that deck. I know I should have that deck, but I don't have that deck. Like, I can't find it anywhere. Turns out I did buy that deck, but I bought it for my sister. So yeah, I love this deck. It was one of those things of like, I really like this and I'm gonna buy it for Kelly, and I'm gonna enjoy borrowing it from her. It's that kind of purchase, if you guys know what I mean. So I love this. It's very Celtic, it's very Green Witch, it's very you know, Avalon energy. It's not an Avalon deck, I don't believe, but yeah, it's got that kind of vibe. These are the backs, absolutely gorgeous. And these are the cards. Again, they have numbers on it, can be used in numerology. I've just loved the nature and that sort of oldie times Celtic vibe, and it has really good keywords on it, just your kind of typical keywords. Number 14, grace. 26, joy. Oh my god, I will tell you, 26 is the day I was born. I was born on the 26th of July. Every time I use this deck, I would say 95% of the time I've used this deck, I pull this card. I kind of think she looks like me too. And joy, right? I'm joking. No, I don't think that I'm all joy, but yeah. I guess as I bought this deck, it only makes sense that I really like this, and it sort of makes it into my faves when it comes to this collection. And I really love it aesthetically, but when it comes to working with it, I haven't worked with it long enough to have a really strong opinion on it. But yeah, Earth Wisdom, if you like it, try it. Alright. Another deck is this A Yogic Path by Sahara Rose. You might already know Sahara Rose. She's a really big name in the spiritual community, the Ayurveda community. She's an Ayurveda expert. She created this awesome deck, which is an oracle card deck, the Yogic Path. So it's very Vedic inspired. So if you know anything about the Vedic astrology and the Vedic belief system and Ayurveda, then you're gonna love this deck. If you just like the look of it when I show you it, I don't think you need to know about any of that stuff, that you can really enjoy this deck whether you know about that stuff or not. It is a gorgeous deck, and the few times that I've used it, I've really loved it. And whenever I've not seen Kelly for a while, I've not used any of her decks, since she got this, which is about a year and a half ago, I always get very excited to use this deck, which for me is always a sign that I've connected somewhat with her deck. One of her decks is when I'm really excited to use it again, when I haven't seen her for a while. This comes with like a sleeve, and then the actual box is white. It's actually quite gorgeous. Personally, I would probably just store this as the white box and get rid of this, but it's not my deck, so. And then it's a really high quality deck, to be honest. Beautiful book, really thick book, really like quality book. And then it has a little message here which says, "May these cards bring you to your highest self." If you can see, sorry, it's not very good lighting. And then this ribbon pull, you have the deck. These cards are beautiful. They have just like they do on the cover and on the book, it has this kind of, I don't know what you call this, like gold braiding. You see, I don't know if you can see, that's gold, like gold foiling. That's it. I think it's called gold foiling, not gold braiding. So on the backs of the cards you can see also there is this gold foiling, and it is gorgeous, I'm not gonna lie. The only thing that's like aesthetically is not connecting fully with me, but it's just aesthetically, so it doesn't really affect my connection with the deck. But this kind of colour, this teal turquoisey colour, is definitely not one of my favourite colours personally. I know I'm sitting in a literal teal room, but this is not my room. That's just like, it's never been one of my favourite colours. I wasn't originally drawn to this deck when I first saw it, but once I used it, where I have little knowledge of Vedic astrology and like Hinduism and stuff, I felt very connected to it because of some of the cards in here. I don't have enough knowledge of the Vedas to really understand every single card, but some of the cards I do know the stories behind it. For example, like Shiva, like I know a lot about Shiva, the god, and the stories behind him. And it's not just gods, it's like there's like Tantra, Pitta, which is a type of, I'm not even going to try and explain this stuff. But the good thing is it comes with a really good book that has a good few pages on each card, and the book is in colour. So you see this card is the Kundalini card, and it has an upright and a reversed meaning, but you do just get that sort of one page on it, but I do feel like that's enough. And again, you can use your intuition with the artwork because I feel like the artwork is really detailed. And this is what some of the cards look like. Kind of that collage style. The texture and the cardstock is that sort of again, that rose petal matte, and the size is that classic oracle card size. There's no numbers on these cards though, so you won't be able to use numerology. There's just the one name of the card. But yeah, I would definitely put this in one of my favourites of her decks. It's one of her newer decks. Like I say, it's only about a year and a half old that she's had it. But yeah, I really like this deck and I would highly recommend it if you feel called to it. Okay, so the next, I'm tired now. I feel like we've still got quite a few decks to go through, so I'm going to be going through it a bit quicker, otherwise this video is going to be so long. So the next deck, I'm sure a lot of you have seen. It's quite a well-known deck in the community, and this is the Druid Plant Oracle. Absolutely beautiful deck. This is the box, huge box. What I love about this deck is it's based in the UK, and all the plants and stuff are like native to Britain. I love it. It comes with this big book, really chunky book. It comes with this giant spread fold out thing, which is just like a fold out, and then you've got the cards. Those are the backs. Cards are pretty big. I'd say slightly bigger than your average oracle. I don't really understand why some decks do this, but I guess it's to sort of inspire people's creativity. But they have 3 playing cards where you could draw your own cards if you wanted to and add them to the deck. Not really something I would do, but I think like artisty type people might be drawn to that. Or there might be a plant that you're very connected to which isn't in the deck, so you want to add it. So obviously these are all plant related, and like I said, they're like native plants for England. Yeah, so let's just have a little look, shall we? Good old chamomile, yarrow, poppy. This is a great deck for if you're a green witch or a kitchen witch or a hedge witch, or you want to learn more about medicinal plants. It's got a lot of information. It has like an upright meaning of the card, a reversed meaning of the card, and then it also has just like the history and information about each plant. I really like this deck and I love plants, so I remember I borrowed this once for a few months and I just really connected with it and I loved working with it, so highly recommend. Let's stick with plants while we're here and look at this little Botanical Inspirations deck and book set. How cute is this deck? I believe this is by, yes, it is US Game System deck. I love just the everything, the packaging, the aesthetic of this deck. It's got this cute little flap lid. It's such a cute little deck. Kind of like average, a bit bigger than average playing cards. I love the cute little book that you get, which is just about each of the cards. And oh yeah, this is the last card I pulled from it, the White Rose. And I don't know if any of you know, but I'm very connected with the White Rose. The White Rose is in a lot of tarot cards, like the Death card, the Fool card. I have a White Rose tattoo on my arm. I don't know if you can see. There it is. And I bought the White Rose from this deck last time I used it, which is cool. So as you can see, the backs here. Not my favourite because I like the colour and the aesthetic, but I don't really like it when there's writing on the back of cards, but hey ho. And let's just have a quick look at some of the cards. Obviously this is a botanical flower deck, so it's all flowers. It's beautiful. For anyone who's into botanical decks, I feel like this is one that you really need to have in your collection because it's just so pretty and dainty and beautiful. It really gives me cottagecore vibes. This next deck is the Angel Answers deck. So this deck reminds me a lot of like a pendulum. So if you sort of ask the pendulum yes and no questions, well, you can ask this deck yes and no questions. It basically has 3 different decks in one. You have 3 decks and you can tell from the colours of the decks, and you can also use them all together. I think these are the backs. You've got like a pink deck, a bluey purpley deck, and a yellow deck, all with the same picture on the back. This biggest deck, which is the pink deck, is sort of just a general advice kind of deck. You could ask it a question. Oh, what should I do? You know, what's the advice around this situation in my life? Blah, 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 blah. Pick a card. It's like, get more information on that, you know? It has cards like that, like meditate to bring your answers. Communicate clearly. It's sort of like a general oracle deck, this pink one. And then the yellow deck is a timing deck. So you can ask it timing questions. So it says, oh, within the next few weeks, or now's the perfect timing, or this is something in the near future. Oh no, you're ready. Oh no, time to wait. And like, not the right time. You know, it's a timing deck. You want to ask for times. And then you have the blue deck, which is your sort of pendulum deck, which is your yes and no questions. So here you have like no, like a really solid no, reconsider, don't stop, unlikely, yes, choose a new direction. So yeah, so it's similar to kind of like that pendulum when you just want to get those quick answers. And I really love this deck. I love anything to do with like angels. I love the angel aesthetic. I love connecting with angel energy. I don't feel super strong connected with my angel guides through this deck, but at the same time I haven't used it enough. I really enjoy it. I think it's kind of a fun with a slight kind of novelty energy to it. But at the same time, I think if you're working with this deck enough, you could definitely get some really good insights from it. But I do think it's not super deep. Personally, I don't find it is. But if you find the deepness intuitively, I think it could be. Again, this is by Radley Valentine, the king of angel decks, my most recent angel tarot deck. This is my deck that I bought most recently. It's also by Radley Valentine. This is his newest deck out. Yeah, he is like the king of angels, let's be real. If it calls to you, or you just want a fun kind of deck like this, yeah, I recommend it. I think it's cute. Okay, so the next deck is a tarot deck. And if you might have noticed, this is the second tarot. So keep it in mind, she's probably took 2 or 3 tarot decks with her to her boyfriends. But one thing about my sister's collection compared to mine is I have a lot more tarot decks and she has a lot more oracle decks. So whenever I need a new oracle to work with, the first person I go to is her, because she's just the oracle deck queen. As you can see, she has tons of oracle decks. But here is one of her tarot decks, one that I do adore, and it's quite an old school one, so a lot of you might already have it. It was published in 1994. 90s decks are some of my favorite decks. My Crystal Visions deck, one of my favorite decks, is a 90s deck. Has this similar kind of 90s aesthetic. This one is called Tarot of the Moon Garden. And I do just love this deck. It's your typical kind of playing card stock, typical tarot size. These are the backs. And these are the cards. I really adore this deck. And I just find it really quirky and fun, easy to connect with, kind of weird, but yeah, I like that. Okay, so the next deck is the Field Guide to the Garden Dragons. I love this deck. It's really hard for me to not buy my own copy, but I do borrow my sister's as much as I can. As you know, I love dragons, and this is a little dragon deck, the garden dragon. It's super cute little deck. Each one has a garden dragon. Each garden dragon is mixed with a food type, like a type of vegetable or fruit. These are the backs, and these are the cards. As you can see, you've got like the zucchini dragon, the strawberry dragon, the pumpkin dragon. This is a gorgeous deck. I could probably do a whole review on this deck. I love it so much, but this video is already long enough, so I am going to stop there with that. But it is one of my favorites of my sister's deck. It's cute, it's easy, it's great for daily pulls, it's great to add to spreads, it's simple. You can use your intuition with that keyword, but it also has a nice little message in the book. The last deck that she has here is one I don't even need to talk about, because I already have a review of this deck from years ago on my channel. I'll put that in the iCard now. Obviously, since I made that review, I've connected even more with this deck, and that of course is the Dragon Oracle cards by Diana Cooper. Everyone knows it is my favourite Oracle deck of all time, and yeah. My sister also loved this deck so much that she wanted her own copy, even though I had a copy, and I can't blame her because it's my favourite deck and I don't really want to lend it out, although I did. But she got her own copy pretty soon after seeing mine. These are the backs and these are the cards, and like I said, you can go look at my review of that, but keep in mind that since that review I've only connected deeper and deeper with this deck, and it's become my favourite Oracle deck and I love it. So that is all of the cards. Yes, that's 20 decks altogether, all reviewed, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please do go check out my sister's Etsy shop. I know she would really appreciate the support. She's just started up her art business, and also if you would like a personal reading with me, you can look that up on my Etsy shop, also in the description below. And just one last thing, if you are looking for an awesome spiritual and esoteric podcast, check out my podcast. We're about 13 episodes in now, and there's lots of episodes to catch up on, and I'd really appreciate it if you took the time to follow our podcast and check that out. I'll also leave that in the description below. For now, thank you so much for watching. The video is finally over and I will see you in the next one. Bye.